Hey guys, Lost here. So Cyberpunk 2077, the game that everybody's talking about. A game that's been under development for more than 5 years now, and whose gameplay reveal trailer is statistically one of the most liked videos on YouTube. Being worked on by CD Projekt Red, creator of The Witcher 3, fans are abuzz about this new game because it seems to be doing so much right. Something about the neon lights in a rainy dystopian landscape, the idea of humans and bionics coexisting and living together, junkies shooting it up in alleyways, gangs fighting it out on the streets, while the well-off take full advantage of their success in life 100 stories up. Something about this is attractive to people. Cyberpunk has spawned TV shows, movies, books, comics, and it is a music and art style all of its own. So this begs the question, where did the cyberpunk genre come from? Why is it so popular now? Why is 2077 so hyped, and what is the development team doing correctly to ensure its success? To figure these things out, we need to go back in time to the roots of cyberpunk and the history of science fiction. However, that is a feat all on its own. Do we go back to the 1960s when a new wave of science fiction hit popular culture? Do we go back to the 1930s when the dystopia was popularized by Aldous Huxley? Or do we go back to the 1800s when stories like Frankenstein created science fiction as a genre? Well, to save time and to make things a little easier, I'm going to go back to 1968 when the roots of modern cyberpunk began to take shape. With this book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?, which was the inspiration for Blade Runner. Coincidentally, Blade Runner was also another inspiration for Cyberpunk 2077. At this point, the term cyberpunk hadn't even been created, let alone popularized, until a decade and a half later. This book was set in a dystopian San Francisco after a nuclear war, where a bounty hunter has to hunt down 6 androids trying to pass themselves off as human. At this point, the dystopia was already a fairly acknowledged piece of literature. However, this book brought something new, the idea of androids and humans working symbiotically to tell a story. However, it wasn't until the 1970s where the high-rise towers and rain-slicked cities really came to life. In 1975, a comic called The Long Tomorrow was released. Inspired heavily by film noir and hard crime fiction, this was a science fiction story set in the future, and was truly one of the first cyberpunk stories ever written, and really what causes us to recognize cyberpunk when we see it. The 60s planted the seeds of cyberpunk and brought science fiction to the mainstream. The 70s created what we now know as the genre, but the 80s finally put a name to what we were seeing. In 1980, Bruce Bethke was writing a fictional story about teenage hackers when he came up with the name Cyberpunk. Little did he know that not only was he naming a genre, but he was starting a movement. The 1980s would soon be considered the golden age of the cyberpunk genre. Neon lights and rock and roll music became another staple of cyberpunk. Books like The Neuromancer and Mindslayer further cemented what the genre was. Movies like Tron, RoboCop, Terminator, and The Blade Runner all latched onto this genre and made it wildly popular. The term cyberpunk had become commonplace, and this is what Bethke had to say. Understand, when I came up with the C word in 1980, all I was trying to do was come up with a snappy, one-word title for this story. I was not trying to define a genre, launch a movement, or do anything more than come up with a memorable, one-word marketing label for the story. It's pretty crazy how things can be created just like that. Now that cyberpunk had hit the mainstream, it was pretty easy to see what exactly this genre was all about. Cyberpunk had brought the high-tech of science fiction of the past to ground level, where it affected the common day-to-day person, rich or poor, where the good guys and bad guys alike worked among the streets with technology rather than flying around in the stars with sleek spaceships. A common term was coined at this time, high-tech, low-life. Cyberpunk was palatable at last. Finally, after the genre was decades in the making, the basis for Cyberpunk 2077 was released. In 1988, a pen and paper tabletop role-playing game was released entitled Cyberpunk, created by Mike Pondsmith. However, 2077 doesn't just share the name. Cyberpunk 2077 is a direct adaptation of the tabletop RPG. In an interview with Pondsmith, this is what he had to say about the genre. Street-level life, crushed under overwhelming political and social forces, but which use a combination of found, scavenged, repurposed technology to fight back and achieve personal freedom. During the creation of the board game, Pondsmith hadn't actually read many of the previous works that had defined cyberpunk. However, he did take a look at books like The Neuromancer for his second edition of the game, Cyberpunk 2020. This was sort of an earlier version of cyberpunk, but also with more of the staple features that decade had produced. However, like many good things in life, everything must come to an end, or at least that's what people thought. The shiny glow of what Cyberpunk had become began to wear off. The rain-slick cities, the flashing lights, the half-humans, half-robots doing drugs in the dark, living among society, became somewhat of a norm in pop culture. More entertainment, movies, and books were put out following the same similar formula. This kind of thing was consistently pumped out over and over again, and people just got bored. So much so that in 1993, a Wired magazine headline read, "Cyberpunk? RIP." However, in many ways, this was just the beginning of Cyberpunk and a new generation of media. In the same year, Time magazine also released a magazine praising the genre, with its futuristic setting and an emerging underground. With the new millennium quickly approaching, people's views turned once again to technology. The 90s bringing things like The Matrix and Deus Ex. This genre had started to have a large effect on popular culture, with authors of cyberpunk novels popularizing the terms like cyberspace, virus, avatar, and metaverse. Once the genre hit the 21st century, it became far more clear what all of these stories, movies, and games all had in common. Cyberpunk focused on the human experience rather than just a technological one. However much technology was within these stories, it was only made possible viewed through the eyes of the everyday person going through the troubles of life. No matter how many bionic limbs people had, or body upgrades, or all the high technology around their society, the darkness, pain, and suffering that people feel throughout life is still a very real part of the cyberpunk genre. And in reality, that's what Mike Pondsmith had been telling us 2 decades before. Which finally brings us to Cyberpunk 2077. In October of 2012, the new title for CD Projekt Red's new game was officially revealed as Cyberpunk 2077. Mike Pondsmith, the creator of the original Cyberpunk, had finally found a company that would be able to put his 2-decade-old vision into real life. And this is what he had to say. "We were looking for a team that were fans, that was not just going to slap a label of cyberpunk on it and make something completely different." And that's exactly what he did. CD Projekt Red, now one of the world's most renowned game producers, was going to make this game. It became very clear to Pondsmith when they approached him that they were extreme fans of the title. He said, "They knew the material. They were quoting things back to me that even I'd forgotten. They got it, and that's the important thing. You have to know why this world exists." To me, it's pretty astounding that the creator of this original game saying this about the company that was about to bring his vision to life, you almost couldn't ask for anything better. And since then, Mike has been working closely with CDPR to make sure the game is going to turn out correctly. Just a few short months after the title was released, they released a teaser trailer, and at the end of the trailer, they left an ominous message. Coming when it's ready. It was official. Fans were hooked. Here was a quality game company coming out and trying to put together an amazing product. However, that's when things turned dark. Over the next 5 years, CDPR went completely silent about their new upcoming title. And over those next 5 years, unfortunately, the gaming industry would be in for quite a ride. The next generation of consoles would soon hit the market. Games rose and fell. Game companies made promises, broke promises, sometimes lied to their consumers, or simply painted a picture that wasn't true. Games like No Man's Sky, Daisy Standalone, Destiny 2, Watch Dogs, even great games like Fallout 4, which I love to this day, to some extent, got players' hopes up and let them fall. Not to mention the waves and waves of microtransactions that now plague the gaming industry. Overall, the trust of a lot of gamers in game companies has really just been broken. At this point, all players really want is honesty. They want to know what they see and hear from developers will come out on the other end. All of this turbulence over the last 5 years has been setting up Cyberpunk 2077 to do exactly what it seems to be doing. At this point, gamers just want a no BS game company that won't yank us around with microtransactions and will tell us what they're going to do. Don't believe me? Take a look at the very end of the E3 release trailer for Cyberpunk. For a split second, you can see the screen flash, and there's a secret message left behind. In it, there are details about why CDPR is doing what it's doing, what its plans are for the future, and what fans can expect. I highly recommend you pause this video and take the time to read it. Now, I know in this video it sounds like I am kissing the ground wherever this game goes, and in a way I kind of am, but I do want to appreciate at least the good things that this game seems to offer. However, believe me, if this game is a letdown, I'll be the first one to say I was wrong. It wouldn't be the first time I've been burned. Are there flaws that can be seen already with the game? Sure, just look at the gameplay trailer. However, let's recap here at the end. This game is staying close to its roots. It's being made by a reliable team that already has the confidence of its fans, and it seems to me like they've been honest every step of the way so far. Not to mention this amazing gameplay trailer that they've released. In 2017, when Mike Pondsmith was asked in an interview, "Are people trying to bring the cyberpunk genre back?" he said, Oh, they're not trying, it's coming back. Anyway, we're getting to the end here. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for this game? Do you think it's going to be a letdown? Or are you as equally as optimistic as I am? So again, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you guys later.